Everybody, my name is Xodas and welcome to Xodas Gaming. In this video, we're going to do a quick overview of the level 56 talents for Frost Death Knights, and we're going to see which one is the best choice depending on the situations and depending on what level 100 talent you're running. So, we're going to be covering the choices for the two viable for PvP level 100 talents for Frost DKs first. Breath of Xodas and Necrotic Plague. Those are the two that we're going to be covering. So, if you're running Necrotic Plague, which Necrotic Plague is definitely the more used ability, the ability that you're going to be running the majority of the time, because Breath of Xodas is only good in certain situations, when you're running Necrotic Plague, you're going to want to run Plague Leech. Now, the reason being is that Plague Bear no longer adds duration to Necrotic Plague, and that's a pretty big deal. It doesn't add duration, so Necrotic Plague only lasts for 15 seconds no matter what. Now what it does do is it adds a stack to your Necrotic Plague. As those of you who know what Necrotic Plague does, Necrotic Plague does more damage for each stack it gets. It gains up to 15 stacks, and once it gets that 15 stacks, it does about 5k damage per tick. So with running Plague Bear, basically, on average, it gives you about 2 seconds more of that 15 stack damage. That equals about 10k damage. 10k damage every 15 seconds is not all that good, not in comparison to Plague Leech. Plague Leech consumes your Necrotic Plague, and every 25 seconds, it gives you up to 2 fully depleted death runes. That means you can get a Howling Blast, an Obliterate, a Death Strike, a Chains of Ice, a Pillar of Frost, anything that requires runes, it gives you an extra rune for it. It does have a 25-second cooldown, but when you think about it, 10k every 15 seconds. So in 30 seconds, that's 20k damage from Plague Bear, or Plague Leech every 25 seconds, you can get anywhere between 30k and 75k, depending on what you're fighting and how lucky you are and all that good stuff. So Plague Leech is obviously the choice for Necrotic Plague. It is definitely the best way to run. Now, Breath of Xodas choices is a little bit more complex, and this is what the majority of the video is going to be focused around. Breath of Xodas, as you guys know, is very good against certain comps. It's very good in certain situations, but there's also a lot of situations where it is not the best choice of a talent. So, when you're running Breath of Xodas, you really have one choice. You could run Plague Bear with it, but it's not near as good as Unholy Blight. Unholy Blight is an AoE ability that basically puts a shroud of little locusts around your character, and anytime anyone comes within a certain yardage of you, 10 yards, they get infected with both your Blood Plague and your Frost Fever dot. Now, Frost Fever not so important. Howling Blast, Chains of Ice, these abilities put Frost Fever on the target, but Blood Plague is something that Frost Death Knights cannot put out very easily. So, that means that, basically, this gets you a lot more spread pressure, and that is really, really nice. It also gets you that extra damage on the kill target, which is a must-have. Now, you're probably wondering, why can't we run Plague Bear or Plague Leech with this? Well, let's begin with Plague Leech. Plague Leech requires both Blood Plague and Frost Fever. Not gonna work. Like, Frost DKs, they only have two abilities that put Blood Plague on the target, and that is Outbreak, which is a 1-minute cooldown, and Plague Strike, which you should not even have bound on your bars. Plague Strike is worthless. It takes one Unholy Rune, and it does almost no damage. So, if you think about that, one Unholy Rune, what do we lose by that one Unholy Rune? We lose a Obliterate, we lose a Death Strike. That's not worth it. Would you rather get that extra dot, just so you can get a Plague Leech, just so you can get another Obliterate, or would you rather just have another Obliterate? Obviously, you just want one more Obliterate. Don't even have Plague Strike bound on your bars. Now, if you absolutely have to run Plague Leech with Breath of Xodas, how I would recommend doing it is doing a macro that is /cast Outbreak /cast Plague Leech. But keep in mind that does put Plague Leech on a 1 minute cooldown rather than a 25-second cooldown, because Outbreak you can only use it every 1 minute. So Plague Leech it's not near as viable. Sure, one more Obliterate every minute, that's not that big of a deal at all. Sure, it can help, but I don't know, I think that just kind of defeats the purpose. Plague Bear doesn't really do too much with Breathless and Xodas, just because of the fact that, sure, it does add duration to your Blood Plague and your Frost Fever, but, and you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, well, Blood Plague, we can't get that out anyway, so that means we can keep Blood Plague up more often. We just Outbreak at the beginning of the match, and bam, we just keep it on. That's not the case. If you do that, then basically they're just going to dispel it. The healer is going to dispel that off of himself, off of their party, whatever it is, because they're going to either A, be dumb enough to actually want to dispel your dots, or they're going to want to dispel their root, or they're going to want to dispel something. Chances are it's not going to stay on there, so basically it'll be on there for maybe 10 seconds out of a minute. So you just wait for the Outbreak to come back, and you reapply it. Big Whoop doesn't really make too much of a difference. So, Plague Bear just is not near as viable as Unholy Blight. Plague Bear, it just doesn't make logical sense. You're just gonna dispel it. It's just gonna be gone. And then you gotta wait another minute anyways. Plague Leech, if you absolutely have to, there you go. But, I mean, that's giving it a 1 minute cooldown, and that's really nothing. Or that's really too much, not nothing, that's too much. The effect is nothing, but it's really too much time to wait for such a minor effect. And then Unholy Blight gets you a little bit extra spread pressure. It's not an amazing talent, but it's better than the other two choices for Breathless and Xodas. So, you know, it gets you a little bit of spread pressure, and that's really quite enough, you know. It's not worthless, but I would definitely prefer to run the other two if I could, but they just don't work well enough. They just don't make up. Unholy Blight's the only level 56 talent that works well with Breathless and Xodas. So that is my opinion on the level 56 talents. I hope it helped. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to say that I'm wrong, anything at all, leave so in the comments below. I read every comment. I reply to every comment. Leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.